Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Scott. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, this is part 8. And for those of you who are watching this for some reason, so there is also previous parts in the bottom of this YouTube. You can access it. And yeah, the container of our discussion here is the overlapping between, the need of overlap between psychotherapy, somatic psychotherapy, processing the mind, and non-duality, somehow the need to combine them in order to really be effective of releasing pain and addiction and trauma. And I just want, first of all, at the beginning, a little informational. So Scott is going to come in my neck of the woods, Grass Valley, Nevada City, very soon, the weekend of 13th, 14th of November. And we are going to do two trainings, 1 day each, in person. One of them is for therapists, practitioners, hypnotists, shamans. You don't have to be a therapist, just to have a strong interest in understanding better about other people's subconscious, or even if you're really interested in this technology that Scott developed, KI, and his work, if you're really so interested in it that you want to understand more on the back end, on the other side, why and how, so you can join that one. And the second one on Sunday is just for anybody. And we decided to make them both in person and both online, because there are many people out there in Europe, in Hungary, wherever they are, in Romania, Sweden, to join us online. So there will be a sign up, and it's affordable. And if some of you are really having difficulty with the price, and I know many of my clients are having difficulty with that, and I know that some of you are really doing the work, talk to me, we can have a more sliding scale. So this is coming up soon. All right. Well, they talk in non-duality, in traditional non-duality, or good non-duality as opposed to neo-Advaita. They talk about that this realization of our true nature, awakening to our true nature as we are that which is aware. Not that I will be that when I'm more mindful or after I do more retreats, but already right now, everybody who is watching this, that which is watching this is the presence. So anyway, they say that this is really like 30% or 40% of the journey. And actually after that, they call it Rupert and Francis and Jean Klein, they talk about this, the post-awakening sadhana, the post-awakening practice, meaning that, okay, you woke up to your true nature and it's all wonderful. Perhaps for some people it's more mysterious and not so flashy, not many bells and whistles, but we still have, they say, you still have the decades accumulated of layers of thinking and feeling in the body and perceiving the world in the mode of separation. So that needs to clean up, they say, need to clean up somehow in order to enjoy the fruits of awakening, to have actually, okay, I'm okay, I'm at peace. So that's what they say. So, however, I don't think this is known very much. And even the people who talk about this, there's not a lot of clear methodology about what to do or how to do. Although I know with Rupert and Francis, there is some methodology, but yeah, so I find that your methodology, the KI, which is like surgically investigating the ego, the imagined separate self that create suffering. So it's like flashes out into the open and then surgically deconstructing it. So that's what I appreciate about it, and I needed it. But what I want to say also is that I think last talk or some of your videos, somebody asked you, hey, do I need to have realization of my true nature? I didn't have it. I don't know what you're talking about. Can I still do KI? So that's what I want to say, that what I found working with clients is that even if they are not interested in our true nature, or they haven't, somehow this still is very helpful. So it can be pre-awakening or post-awakening. You can look at it as, okay, you're deconstructing the separate self, or you can look at it to work out your wounds and traumas and addictions. Somehow I find it very versatile. So I just want to thank you for somehow inspiration, and Allah working for you brings this new thing. So yeah, if you have any comments or thoughts on that.
I just did a video this morning about that, because that question comes up. The one thing I'll say about it, because you said it so eloquently already, Mihai, and there's not much to add to that, is in processing this stuff from awareness with KI or something like that, there can be a deeper abiding as awareness. They're not mutually exclusive, because sometimes we talk about it like they're completely two different things. There's awakening to awareness, and then there's the embodiment process or whatever happens post-awakening. But what I'm seeing is that whether you've had the recognition or not, doing the deep somatic work does help you stabilize in it. Whether it's your experience all the time or some of the time, it helps. And so the two become merged in a way with this work. As you do it, you eventually start to recognize your true nature, and doing the somatic work does help with that. I just had a session yesterday where someone was telling me at the beginning, I don't want this awareness recognition. This is not something that and just by working with the stomach, and it opened quite a bit, he was like, oh, okay. So now I get more of a sense of it. So I think they work together in that way too, not just one or the other. Yeah.
Yes. It's like the awareness recognition is, I guess, the sky recognizes that there's the sky, but there are still lots of clouds. So it's kind of working out the clouds, kind of questioning them, dispelling them. Mm-hmm. Or the sky didn't recognize, I feel I'm the cloud, and then we are doing the cloud dispelling work, and then we'll be like, oh wow, what is this? It's kind of quiet, and I am. Actually, I find it more that the usual non-dual pointers towards awareness are like higher reasoning, usually, like intellectual pointers, and the student is like, okay, I get it. And also you need to have the teacher there, and the transmission, and the satsang, and the so from one angle I find it's more experiential, chewy, tasty recognition of the piece of the background, rather than in understanding it and believing it and trying to find it.
Yeah, say that again, rephrase that so I can answer it better. I think I get it. I want to make sure what you're asking.
Well, actually, let's drop this. I have somebody who comes to me, and I met with him yesterday, and he says, hey, I have a question for you, and for Scott, actually. I was like, okay, tell me. So he says, well, I have this anxiety, and I know I shouldn't call it anxiety, and it's sensation in my chest, and it's when I'm in public, when I'm going to people, I'm like, so some kind of insecurity, hesitancy, something, and fear of being judged, or but I have this, and I had it all my life, and I'm coming to your group, he says, and I don't know, I feel reluctant to talk about it. because I may, because I know it's not real. I know it's not real, and I know it's not me. But if I talk about it, or if I share, I think I may reinforce it. So I think I would just rather not talk about it, and I just delete, right? Delete file, right? I was like, no.
No.
So can you? What would you say to this gentleman?
Well, that opens up a whole conversation that we've been in that conversation about. Part of it is repression, because in those moments you can just repressing, and then the teaching is reinforcing it. If you interpret it a certain way, you sounds like they're reinforcing something, but you
Yeah,
may not even know that you're doing it. That's kind of one of the dangers of that, is like listening to that. And then, so if teachers are saying things and people are interpreting it like, I shouldn't even bring it up because it's not real, it's not me, then the person then just lives with the anxiety because
yeah,
nothing is reaching it. So that's, we've been talking about that in several
yeah,
videos, just how the teachings. And I don't think that there are teachers out there with any ill will at all. I don't
yeah,
think it's like that. I just think it's like not catching on to something about how we're talking about this. And it does matter how we talk about this,
yeah,
because and how we language it is where those little holes are for people. They fall right in there, get stuck and stay. So I'm
yeah,
glad that you said that to him and said, hey, no, talk about it,
yeah.
because
I mean, I explained more to him, and it's interesting, that teacher who it was me, so I can see that he came to me to group, and then I wasn't getting too in depth with the deconstructing somatic thing, and I would just go a lot into, hey, we are the witness, and then whatever you observe is not you, it's not real. And also I would say a lot of this, welcome it when there's resistance and stuff, welcome it, watch it, are you that, or are you that which is aware of it? And he was like, oh wow, yeah. So he had some realization, but there was this, I don't want to go into it because I may reinforce it.
mm.
Yeah,
Oh, can I say something there then? Because I think he may have it somewhat backwards, because by not going into it, it could be reinforced and kept around. And one of the
yes,
things you and I know about this work is that when you have like anxiety that just sits in the body, generalized ongoing anxiety, there's going to be thoughts connected to that that are operating
yes,
on a pretty regular basis. So by not bringing it up, then it almost does the opposite of what he thinks, because by
yes,
bringing it up, you can then pull up the thoughts to go with it, and there can be like a seeing through it. But if he never brings it up or dismisses it as just an arising, then all that stuff
yes,
remains unconscious.
yes, and basically he was like, hey, it's just sensation. And I can see that I would say that, it's just sensation, it's nobody there, but no, it's not just sensation, bro. It's if we're kind of dropping in a little bit and you go there and you let mining out the
Mhm.
sensation, it will say something. Oh no, or maybe he was, all kind of stories in childhood where he was ridiculed, or somebody said, oh, he is like stupid, or
Mhm.
then he carried it for like 60 years almost.
Yeah. It reminds me too, though, when we're teaching or in front of a group, like again, how we talk about these things matters, because
Yeah,
it's the language of that. So if we send signals to people as we're teaching or leading a group that these things are just ego, if we keep reinforcing that, that's where I think the
yeah,
repression is. I know I'm just saying the same thing, but
yeah,
I think it's just good to continue talking about that,
yeah.
uh, because it's very prevalent how people treat these things,
I
as
started
just an
to,
arising.
yes, I started to alter a little bit. I feel like also I need to speak and point to awareness and to that. I start with that, but
Yeah.
then I often say, hey, this is very important. This is essential. This is the direct path. This is the ultimate. Yet, it's not going to cut it. You need to do this too.
It's the ultimate, but it's not going to be the ultimate.
Yeah, it's exactly. I on the same topic,
But
actually, yeah, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, but they're aligned, because in the ultimate seeing, it is just seen as arising, coming, going. But the point being is that you can't see that if it's not coming up. That's the thing.
Yes,
So
yes,
I always say it's like the cart before the horse. So we say something as an arising, just happening to awareness, but that's really before we actually have the experience, because when it's contracted like that, we still identify with it on some level. That's why it's around.
Yeah.
So bringing it up more consciously is what helps us to abide more as the awareness and see through it. So that's brings it all together for me, so that we're not talking about two different things here,
Yes.
like non-duality and something else. We're talking about non-duality within that, a
Yeah.
different kind of processing to go deeper.
Yeah. I guess the KI, or in like a good, anyway, KI, which is awareness-based somatic investigation, to really see what we are not, to see the false identity, but thoroughly. I think you said it, people said it, whatever we are not aware of is power, drives behavior, drives this and drives that. And like we see, he came to me, and he was probably he came to me for anxiety. I want to, and then so I teach him, mindfulness, meditation, witnessing, start to do some little processing, and he has some relief, yeah, and it diminishes a little bit, and then we stop working, we stop working, and then he's like, okay, well, that's not real. I don't want to go there. So then, yeah, the teaching, as you said, it's like, well, it's not real. Don't go there. So delete. Just want to delete it. You can see it. It's tricky.
I can see the same thing. It's similar, but when people have the realization of awareness and they say, I don't want to go back to any processing because I might go back into the seeking. But really,
Yeah.
that's not going to work. That's not going to happen if the processing is skillful. Just like if you bring the fear back up, people have the fear, well, if I bring it back up, then I might be stuck in it. But the process of bringing it up is actually more fully allows you to see through it, whatever's remaining there. So again, just talking about it this way, people can go, oh, okay, I see. So I don't have to land there. I don't have to land in. I'm done, and there's nothing else to see. Because really what they're saying is I'm afraid. A lot of times we'll say I'm done or I'm realized, but in the back, it's like there's operating this fear, like I don't want to go into that because it might bring it back up, which really doesn't happen if you have skill. It doesn't.
Yeah. Also, we are not taught we are not taught to be present or witness, but also definitely we are not taught to how to unpack the subconscious vaults one by one. I mean, this is a highly specialized skill, and most people stay at the level of, oh, there's this which I don't want, basically. There's this which I don't want, and it keeps sucks me,
Yeah, well, there's a lot we could say about, I don't want to go too much into this, but if you could help kids early on in life, you don't have to get them into the non-dual realization, but just help them process traumas when they happen, or some stickiness. Imagine the workload that you would be saved by starting early. I know that's a whole nother topic, but as well as I do, that people are coming in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s and finding a lot of stuff that they never learned. Like you say, nobody ever taught them how to process it. So then later in life, you're stuck with all this stuff.
There was on Facebook some time ago, something was so touching. There was a video of about 20 minutes where there was this toddler. I mean, I don't know, like 1.5 or something, in his underwear. I was called that, toddler underwear. and his dad was just sitting there, and the boy was having a temper tantrum. He was just yelling and like, and he will go to the dad and he will kind of hit him, and he will just squirm around. And what would normally happen is that, oh, stop it, don't do it, oh, come here, and the dad was just there and being open and not shutting down, just allowing that to happen, because what the toddler needs to do, it was so like very touching, allowing the toddlerness to be, and not making motion wrong.
Yeah, especially if you're in public and your child is doing that, because then there's what other people think about me, or the shame about my child that can play on you. So he had a lot of clarity just to sit there if he was around other people, because you can imagine the other people like, get your son in order there, like, and then that sends the signal, and one way or the other, the child gets sent the signal that it's not okay to be myself.
You know, I think the same day when this gentleman asked me, I had a there's a well-known spiritual teacher, and also who has a lot of experience with addiction, huge amount of experience with addiction personally. And we are somehow friends. You know, I like not to mention names. So I love this gentleman, and he's super authentic and super deep. And he's been through hell with addiction. He helps people with addiction. And so I know he just called me, say, hey, what's up? How's it going on? And I haven't talked to him for some time. So I told him, hey, you know, what's going on is that I started to talk to Scott Kiloby, and you know, I'm a therapist. So I was sharing my enthusiasm about that. And he says, oh yeah, I know him. Yeah, I went there. Yeah, he's cool. And I started to tell him more, like, because I told him, you know, basically in my profession, but also for me, I needed some more precise tools to observe and deconstruct what we are not. What you are saying is what we are not, the imagined self. So it's really helpful. And so and we're going into this and the trauma and a lot. And he was like, cool. Just make sure to know that it's not real, yeah, because that's not real. And I was like, and I was like, yeah, I know it's not real, but this which is not real has been driving addiction in you for 40 years, yeah, and in me. And so that's not, I know it's not real, but it just drives the bus for so long. And he was like, yeah, okay. He said, well, you know, do whatever you need to do, you know. And so I like that. And but it was interesting, this like, hey. And I got this from other teachers who were wonderful, that they helped me to recognize true nature and a lot of things. They would say, yeah, just don't get too involved with that. Let it dissipate by itself. That's what they would say. What shall I do with these strong patterns and this terror? Well, just watch it. Don't worry. It's going to go by itself.
Oh, there's so much to say about that.
Well,
Well, one is the cart before the horse thing, because even if a teacher says it's not real or there's no self, if the people that are experiencing it, it's not their experience, it's like putting the cart before the horse for them. And so it's much more powerful to come into these insights and realizations on your own, to be led into it directly on your own. If you're told it's that way and it's not your experience, where's the bridge that helps you that become your experience? There's nothing wrong with saying there's no self or it's not real. It's just that for me, it's like, if I don't experience that directly, then it's just belief. It's just something that I don't experience. So, you know, you mentioned Neo Advaita, you know, teachers were coming out and saying that, get in front of the room and saying there's all there is this, there is no self. So that was the answer given to most of the questions coming in the audience. And sometimes it worked well, like for people, they would just pop and recognize, but for others who were dealing with trauma and unprocessed things, that pointer then became a source of frustration because something wasn't being met. It was like cart before the horse so much that, and then those people had to leave those teachings and come to more processing.
yeah.
Everybody's different. Everybody's going to resonate however they're going to resonate. But I'm a little bit weary of throwing any sort of non-dual pointer that on an intellectual level for sure. Assuming that everybody's going to, just if I say it, that they're going to see that. Like, that may be the case for some, but for many, as you know, it's not that easy. You don't just say it and then it's realized.
Yeah. You know, I recently had another ayahuasca journey, which it's interesting because it has it's like an ally for KI in some way, because it just goes in a mysterious ways and goes into your vaults and pulls out what you need to see now. And it's going to be relentless until you see it and you feel it. So it happens several times that brings some mysterious sadness. And I was like, I don't need to go there. No, I don't want to make noise. And then it will be relentless until I will break down and cry for like 4 minutes, and then it's gone. Anyway, so it I guess breaks beyond the repression barrier, the suppression, the busyness, and pulls things like that. However, anyway, you need to have enough understanding, wisdom, how to integrate that later. But what it helped me, one of the insights I had in the ayahuasca, I realized that I started to have this slight judgment towards some of my previous teachers. Like, yeah, that's cool, but doesn't cut it. Yeah. And so a little bit, very little, that I was suppressing because I love them and I'm grateful. Like, and now the Scott thing is the ultimate, I mean. But then the journey was like, it said like, man, like Francis, Rupert, Paul Hederman, whatever, Ramana, Scott, this shaman, it's all the same. It's all God, man. It's all just the ultimate, expressing itself in this way, and it's all good. It's just the updated teaching or something. I was like, just let it go, drop all that shit, So I want to put this on too, because we are like, yeah, that's not enough, whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
there's something else that goes on when you're in a teaching or a practice and you find the limitation of it and then you leave it, is that what I've noticed for a while, there's a little bit of shadow boxing that we have to do to discern the difference. Like, so when I left 12-step, that wasn't my recovery program. For a while, I was kind of shooting darts at it because I needed to sort of pull myself out of it. I think it's a natural process to start shadow boxing it. But then at a certain point, you want to integrate it and not make it an enemy and recognize, again, it's all the expression of truth. So the way I say to people, because people come to me and they'll say, well, the way that you're talking about it makes me feel disloyal to the non-dual teachings. I'm thinking, well, if you think of it differently, see it differently, you don't have to be disloyal. You may have to shoot darts at it to come into something new. But then eventually you're going to see it's all speaking to the same thing. And you're not going to be an enemy with that anymore. So, but I think it's a natural process. I don't think you have to, like, when you're shooting darts at it first, you don't have to, like, that's part of the process. It's like, there's no way that I could have come into a new model of recovery without first separating myself, not really, from 12-step. But then once I got into the new way of seeing things, and I saw, well, there's no reason to make that an enemy anymore. That's just what that is. And that's a much more inclusive, encompassing, embodied approach to all other than, and some people really think that I have all these major issues with teachings, but for me, it's just discernment. It's not like I'm trying to kill the other teachings. It's just, I need to be able to discern for myself, for my own path, the difference between this and that. And I think everybody should have that discernment.
Yeah. It really showed me non-intellectually that it's the same. It's not Scott and Francis and Rupert and Philip the shaman and myself. It's God. All of it is God. I was like, oh, okay, got it. And I had strong trauma I didn't know I had, that is very pernicious and hidden. This attachment disruption, attachment wound. It's not all the things I needed more specialized things. Maybe other people raised in a wonderful, I don't know. Other people have less, that might be enough. I don't know, or whatever. Some other teachers, or they have great merits in another lifetime, so they are almost there. So they come here, they hear somebody is like pop, but I never met anybody like that personally. And
well, also, just because someone's a teacher doesn't mean they don't bypass or avoid or resist things. Because sometimes we project onto them these things that are not actually happening. So if that's the transparency issue, if every teacher could start talking more about this stuff, you could see then more of this, but you can't. So there's a wall there, and you can't tell whether the teacher's bypassing. And if you sometimes take them to task, they'll deny it. They won't be open to process it. And then there's the wall right there.
Yes. I was doing it, people come to me, they're like, oh my God, it's so wonderful. I learned so much, and projection, I'm special. And I don't talk about how I'm smoking this and I'm doing that, and how it's patterns in relationship, and, I'm tweaking now.
Now you're talking about it though.
Now I'm talking about it now more. Actually, I'm like, hey, here's what's up. I'm sharing, I'm submitting through the process. Let's go back, last time we got into going into more this repression work, and we focus primarily on anger. And previous times we talk about authenticity. And so actually, meanwhile, since our last talk, I first of all, I work with people every day, and I can see, as you see, that this is so prevalent, and it's never talked about, and it's like, yeah. So I could see how effective it is, and how this spiritual surgery, ego surgery with this KI, it's so saves so much time and saves money and saves the insurance, because you have to do less sessions, talk forever. So, but I discovered on myself, how about grief repression and what this called these contractions that we talk about, contractions in the body that are not physical. I knew it's not physical, especially when it's on the frontal line. That's definitely not physical. Even if you have other parts, the head or the hip or the spine, that also might not be physical. But anyway, I happened to get some inspiration to stop smoking weed, and somehow, and I started to become more aware of a slight contraction in my stomach that I wasn't so aware before. And I was like, huh. And also, I was, in a relationship, processing, and there's sad things discussed, sad, grieful things discussed, and I don't feel it. I don't feel it. And I'm uncomfortable when the other person shares about sadness. I'm like, and then I notice this contraction more and more, and it's like, and I know this, I don't want it. And so I started to actually sit and do the work and let go resisting it and be curious about it and be like, do this inquiry, like, who or what is this about? I mean, it was about the relationship. It's about some stuff like that. And when I do this, I want to feel this fully. I want to feel into this fully. Also, I know from our work that this contraction is not a contraction. Contraction hides some feeling that is not allowed. And I want to feel this fully. There will be this voice, no, I hate this. I just fucking hate this. No. Also, I by the way, in ayahuasca too, soon there will be this, like, there was this, I don't like this pain. I don't want emotional pain anymore. I hate this. I was like, whoa, this, anyway. So I go into it, and while this is happening, I don't want it. I hate it. At the same time, more tears, a little bit. Tear, another tear, another tear. So I kept doing it a few days. And it started to have much less resistance talk, and then just crying and then crying. And then one day, I think I told you, the cancellation, I was like, and I was feeling this in the stomach. And if I have a session, I focus on the other, goes away. I have a cancellation, I do this, and man, I just bawling like a baby. And it wasn't even about this relationship. It was about, I don't know what, but I didn't care. So that was wonderful. And I just cried and cried and cried. And then I also opened to, okay, what does it say? And it was like, oh, love is lost. Love, I'll never, I'm always going to be alone. There was some kind of mental content, but there was just, so I could see that maybe I have less repressed anger, but I think this repressed grief, repressed loss. Also, there was fear in it, like there's a fear of loss, fear of feeling grief, fear of this. So yeah, so thank you. Thank you for that. And let's go into the repression of other feelings.
That's a really good example to go back of something that we're saying. So if you're feeling a contraction around somebody, if you go with the delete route or don't bring it up route, there you go, is the missed opportunity, because look at the richness that came from actually questioning it. So if you just say, okay, here's the contraction coming up, it's just an arising, do nothing with it, it goes back down. But what actually happens is the contraction just itself, it's not deconstructed, it just dissipates and further recedes back down
Yeah.
out of our, or it maybe gets smaller, but it hasn't been dealt with. But that's an example right there, is if you just open to it with some inquiry questions, you can go deeper with that, so that the next time you're around that person, you're having a different experience. If you just let the contraction dissipate every time, you might see this pattern happening over and over around these people. That to me is like a perfect example of what we're saying, right? You just said right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, I guess I was subconsciously afraid and trying to avoid this, because my particular wounding connected with loss, or it's like fear of loss, fear of separation, some kind of really young, old.
Yeah.
So, but somehow I through the work, I mean, with this KI, you're like, okay, bring it on, come, all these monsters that I'm trying not to see. It's like, okay, come. And each time, Francis says this, let it devour you. As a lion comes at you and you ask me what to do, let it devour you. And you see that the lion is like a theater lion. But I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll let it devour me. But I would never let it devour me, because it was like some much stronger part not allowing the lion to devour me.
Yeah. So you were hearing a pointer about it devouring you, but it couldn't happen because why? Like what, when you get down to specifics, what was blocking that?
Well, first of all, it will almost never come. It will almost never come. I liked it when I was in satsang, and Francis will say this, I'll be like, yeah, my spiritual warrior spirit was like, yeah, I'll do that next time. but no, it won't come. Also, I'm busy all the time, busy. Then I go in the evening, I smoke. Then I go and watch Netflix. When can it come? When? Sometimes some breakup happens, and then it comes, and then I couldn't welcome it. I'll be like, no, don't leave me. So I'll just regress into baby state or child state. And I mean, yeah, some will come, but I was trying to, I couldn't. I couldn't. It was somehow my spiritual prowess, how they call it, it was offline because it was too strong,
It reminds me that if I haven't lost my thought here, I think I have. Something came up for me and it's gone. That happens, as you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll come back to it. Talk about something else.
So the cost, I mean, I know you had a lot of experience with the cost of repression.
I know what it was.
Yeah, go.
I don't think that we even have to get busy or even be addicted to something for something not to arise, because the anger repression for me, I spent long hours of just being in awareness for years, and it still hid. And of course, I knew how to get busy too, and I had my addictions, but there were definitely long periods of time, even in meditation or sitting with people, where it just never arose. And that's the insidious thing, I think, with the repression, is that the idea is if I'm in awareness, it's going to come up, but our experiences doesn't for many people, and so their body contracted. So I just don't think you have to be busy. I think the repression mechanism is so powerful that it doesn't really matter what you do. It's going to hide until it doesn't anymore.
At the same time, these good non-dual teachings I was following, like Francis and Rupert, they will say, hey, when there is a sense of lack, sense of something is missing, sense of something is wrong in your body, pay attention, don't escape it, don't avoid it, stay with it, welcome it, let it come. They would say that, and I'll be like, oh yeah, but no.
Wouldn't come.
Yeah, it wouldn't come, but also I would escape it. I would escape it with addiction, busyness, and putting attention on something else, and then that goes away temporarily,
Yeah. Just like a simple question, like, I want to feel this, or I love to feel
Yeah,
that whole disposition towards it right there.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
saying that evokes something up that would normally be hiding through the busyness. So that's what we're doing, you know.
yes, yes. Oh, and in that process, I understood, could see my dad differently. So I thought he had the anger problem, but actually, I think my dad, and there's all of oppression, the communist oppression and suffering, and my grandfather was in some concentration camp, and life destroyed, and for the communism for 50 years. So there's in Romania, there, I think in Russia, Hungary, all of the places, like it's hopeless. It's not going to work. Your suffering, it is in vain. You can't even express it. You can't. You're fucked, basically. So I could see that it might not even be mine, and I had the sense that, yeah, all this like decades of choked grief, and he couldn't share it. He couldn't express it because he needed to be strong, and express it to whom? And who gives a shit? And there's no trauma. There's no psychotherapy. It doesn't exist.
Mhm.
So somehow this choked, hopeless, powerless grief, that I think he was sitting on a lot of grief and loss that was repressed, that would blow out as rage sometimes,
I see. Yeah.
you know?
So what kind of anger did he get? Was he the kind that would just blow up and then be over it quickly? Or kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he would not be abusive. No, no, he'd be wonderful and self-sacrificing, but and he would be quiet and stern, quiet, but positive. But then if a neighbor said something, or somebody on TV said something, or in the car, somebody cut, be like strong suddenly,
Mhm.
like with the like, "Ah." And I'll be, now I'm, okay, I'm afraid and I have to be very careful and all that.
Yeah.
But
And he probably had no understanding of what was going on.
no, he
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah,
I think that's like it is for a lot of us. We don't know what's going on. We're just reacting and responding. And that's another reason why to process, because having the insight, it's not just the clarity, but having the insight, oh, this is the reason why. It's not intellectual. It's like, oh, in inquiry, it's revealed that I was repressing this, that
yeah,
this intergenerational trauma is affecting me this way, that this identity is here. So that's, again, another
yeah,
reason to process and don't just talk about awareness, that there's
yeah,
insight that's
yeah.
looking at.
And it's not really, I could see, oh, my dad, or my parents, but it's like a long line. It's not his fault. I can see that, just it's a luxury and a privilege that
Mhm.
is enough stability here, although it's still pretty fucked up what's happening, but it's enough stability and peace and knowledge and YouTube to have tools, process
Yeah.
trauma and stuff.
Yeah. I had the same thing in my family. It was just a different situation. Everybody was repressed around most emotions on my mom's side, and they had no idea about it. They were innocent of that. But I had anger coming up in my inquiry. Is like, how could you do this to me? Like, why? But it's like it's a bit misplaced because they were unconscious. They
Yeah,
didn't. But I had to feel that anger to get through it, and just recognizing it's a pattern that nobody ahead of me caught on to is all. That's all. Like my
yeah,
extended family, nobody in that family was processing. Nobody in their family, so it just got passed all the way down.
yeah,
Everybody's unconscious to it, and therefore everyone's innocent. But something has to break the chain, right? Unless
yes,
well, it
yes,
doesn't. But it's nice when something breaks the chain.
yes. So I just want to bring this up. It's and we won't have time to get into it, but uh, also the love repression, and the love and affection repression, that I did the litmus test on myself with the family of origin, and everything I couldn't. It wasn't allowed. It wasn't. I couldn't. And I started to actually. I did with a group, and we did it. Like, I could feel and express this. If you get any version of no, why? I will add this. Why? Just to, and that will bring interesting stuff. And then we'll all go around the group and see what comes up. And it was very revealing, and all of this, they are portals towards doing some processing work.
I think so. And you think of when we talk about, we've said this before, but joy and peace and love, these words get thrown around. And the idea is when
Yeah,
I become realized, I'm just naturally going to be loving towards everyone else. There's going to be joy all the time and maybe even bliss or whatever, until you recognize that you came from a family where nothing like that would have been allowed. And then the idea is, well, that doesn't matter because I've awoken now. So surely it's going to be allowed now. No,
yeah,
it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work. That just going to show itself to you. And a lot of these, you have to dig. I mean, if somebody can show me a different way here, I'm open, but it just wouldn't come up. And here's the other thing I want to say. If anybody out there is just questioning whether to do repression work because it doesn't fit into the non-dual thing or whatever, trust me that when you go through this stuff, it feels different in relationship. Like when you're doing,
yeah,
you actually express that in the way you couldn't before. It changes you. There's a transformation on the level of the individual expression. It's not just that there
yes,
is no, how you show up in the world in relationship is different. Is what I know.
yes. Yeah, I mean, there's a big cost. I mean, you pay the cost of extreme pain and physical ailments. I didn't get there, but the cost of, cost of anger repression, you can't put boundaries. You can't say, no, man, no, no, thank you. No, back away, back off,
Yeah,
fuck you. You can't say
yeah,
it.
that makes sense.
Or the other
Hey,
one,
this, you're annoyed. Like, frankly, today on YouTube, the alarm went off. I said, "Damn, that's
yeah,
annoying."
yeah,
And it's like I just thought, well, I don't know if I could have said that 6 years ago because that would have been a sign of anger and that would have been ego. And it's just that kind of thinking, like
yeah.
crazy.
Also, the grief, I could see that. Okay, so this was repressed unbeknownst to me, and I think it's a new addition to your addiction work, which I want to have a whole thing recently. I want to have a whole topic on addiction. But I think this you shared recently, it's a new driver besides deficiency, story, shame, chronic pain, various things. But repression, anger, emotion repression is a driver towards addiction. So in order to keep that down, I found it helpful that it will help to keep that down better if I smoke or if I do this or that,
Yeah.
so it was correlated. And now when somehow after I cried there like a baby on the couch of the client before the client, then afterwards I was like, it was peace. Like, but before I was trying to have peace on top of unfelt feelings that I didn't know I have, and that's stressful. So by allowing all of these things, then you can have real peace, the peace that passes understanding, not some manufactured
Yeah.
temporary peace,
Right. Ego-based piece. The other thing is, so the emotional repression comes partly from science. They're studying and saying it's behind
Yeah,
mental health. But that is not enough either, because with inquiry, you can see the connections. Like, otherwise, it just remains intellectual. Like, you'll know because science says that emotional repression, but you can't find it in your experience.
yeah,
You have a hunch, and you might say, I'm addicted to